very important partner for Europe in terms of regional peace and security. Uganda is a primary troop contributor to regional peacekeeping, particularly in Somalia, and it plays a key role in mediating conflicts in South Sudan and the DRC. Uganda is also a major refugee hosting nation, influencing regional stability by providing refuge and security to a large number of displaced persons. As partners, we want to work together to improve the situation of the Ugandan population. At the same time, we must be clear that our commitment to human rights and fundamental freedoms in the European Parliament is non-negotiable. We will not shy away from difficult conversation and will not contribute to the silencing of opposition. In the spirit of partnership, as illustrated by the Samoa Agreement, we wanted to have an opportunity to discuss these issues of concern with the government of Uganda. Unfortunately, the ambassador couldn't be here today with us, but we will sure make a new appointment so that we can also have an exchange of view with the ambassador. It is important to note that accountability is one of the central principles of democracy and it applies to the EU treaties. As part of its oversight role within the EU institutions and parliamentary diplomacy, the European Parliament regularly adopts resolutions on electoral processes worldwide, particularly when credible reports raise strong concerns. Resolutions are an essential means by which the European Parliament expresses its view on political processes, EU politics and global developments. The Parliament also uses resolutions to scrutinize other EU institutions, including the European Council, as part of its democratic oversight role within the European Union. In the resolution on Uganda, which is adopted on the 12th February, which was supported by an overwhelming majority of members, 514 votes in favor, 3 against, and 56 abstentions, we note serious concerns regarding the conduct and aftermath of the Ugandan general elections held on the 15th of January 2026, which has unfortunately failed to meet fundamental democratic standards. That opposition leaders and members such as Robert Kyagulanyi, it's easier to pronounce Bobi, and human rights defenders such as Sarah Bire were particularly targeted in a very alarming manner, with arbitrary arrests, prolonged detention, and even disappearances. This is why we called in our resolution for the end of all violence, threats, harassment, arbitrary detention of opposition figures, activists, and critics, the dropping of all politically motivated charges, the lifting of arbitrary suspension of civil society groups, and the organization of comprehensive electoral and institutional reforms to ensure the independence of the Electoral Commission and judiciary. We also called for independent and impartial investigations into crimes against humanity committed by Ugandan political and military leaders, and into similar crimes committed by politicians and military in other African countries. We have here with us today NUP leader Mr. Bobi, who himself has been a subject of institutional harassment and who said that his wife and children fled Uganda for fear of their lives following the January 15 presidential election. The European Parliament resolution also mentioned very serious concerns about how the opposition has been treated in the run-up, during and after the elections. We are eager to hear an update from your side. We would also welcome some concrete ideas on the way forward for Uganda. Dear sir, you have the floor. Good afternoon, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, friends. Greetings. I appreciate so much the opportunity. I want to appreciate the European Union Parliament for the resolution on Uganda and for keeping an eye on Uganda. We don't take it for granted. Every time we see development partners keeping an eye on what is happening here in Uganda. We also recognize that the EU is an important partner to Uganda, and we intend to maintain and also improve this partnership and this cooperation. We would also love to see this relationship happening between the people of Uganda and the European Union, not just General Museveni's illegitimate military regime. I'm still on the run. I'm still in hiding because of the continuing threats on my life since what happened on the 16th of January when my house was, my compound was raided and I fled my house. And also the following raid that happened on the 23rd of January where my wife was assaulted and my family members were assaulted, and the military took over my home, which the military still occupies to the present day. My home is surrounded and the military is in charge of it now. What happened on the 15th of January and the preceding days was not an election. It was a military operation, and I'm very glad that it was clearly stated during the debate in the European Union Parliament. This violence started much earlier. It started on nomination day, and it went through the campaign trail. And I'm glad that the resolution mentions in specifics victims like Mesa Chokero, who was shot and killed, and also General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is the military chief and the son of General Museveni, came out on Twitter and, mentioned how he killed 22 of our people and hoping that I would be the 23rd. I must mention, though, that the numbers that he put are much less. Maybe he mentioned or he meant those that he killed personally. Otherwise, the numbers that we have of the victims, of the people that have been killed, are much more than 22. Many civil society organizations were closed down, especially those that are in the area of governance. It was mentioned, and I want to reiterate it again, that the internet was shut down 3 days before the election. Media houses were ordered not to relay the results that were happening and all that was going on ground on the polling stations, to ensure that there's a clear disconnect between what was happening in the polling stations and what was being relayed by the Electoral Commission. I'm very glad that Dr. Sarah Bire is with us today. In this meeting, she was arrested, detained, because she was taking an effort to speak out and educate people, the citizens of Uganda, about their rights and on democracy. I mentioned it that 2 of my deputy presidents were abducted on the eve of the election, and they remained missing for 3 weeks. We later learned that they were being detained in a military barracks, in a special forces military barracks, which is run by General Museveni's son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Most of our coordinators were arrested, were picked and detained. Some are still in detention, while some were dropped off. These also included officials from our election management committee. So what Mr. Byabakama, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, relayed was actually completely different from what happened on the grounds. The law requires that there must be, coordination in the tallying of the results. That did not happen. The candidates were not given copies of declaration of result forms, and the Electoral Commission simply declared numbers that it did not justify where they were coming from. As we speak, we are still demanding that the Electoral Commission uploads the declaration forms so that the nation can be able to follow in transparency, so we can be able to compare the evidence that we have, the declaration of result forms that we have, to what was paraded by the Electoral Commission. But up to now, they have not uploaded the results on the internet like it's supposed to be. Somebody may ask, why then didn't we go to court? But we've mentioned it again that institutions in Uganda have all been destroyed, and including the judiciary. The manner of appointment of the Chief Justice recently is evidence to that. The Chief Justice was sworn in General Museveni's farm. So that and many other reasons cause us not to have, trust in the judiciary in Uganda. And many times the regime, General Museveni or his son, have actually been guiding publicly and sometimes privately, determining how the judiciary does its work. So we found no redress whatsoever in the Ugandan judiciary, and that's why we did not go to court. We have presented some asks which I want to reiterate here. We've asked for targeted sanctions that target particular individuals and regime officials that have, excelled in gross human rights violations. We believe that will curb their appetite in abusing, human rights, in undermining democracy, and to ensure that there's accountability for their crimes against humanity. Because I know we have other speakers on the platform, I want to appreciate you for the opportunity and to further call for more interest and for more attention to the people of Uganda. We really appreciate the attention, but we still request the international community to keep an eye on Uganda, to keep an eye on what is going on here in our country. I thank you for God and my country.
Thank you very much. I can promise we will do that. I make sure as a chair of the delegation EU Africa that we will keep an eye on Uganda and we will follow up the situation very closely. We have also here with us today prominent human rights lawyer and expert on constitutional governments, Dr. Sarah Bire, who was arrested a few days before the vote to give us her own account on the situation from the civil society perspective. You have the floor, Dr. Bire. Welcome in this meeting. We don't hear you. Maybe put the mic on the technical level. Try again.
Hello.
Yes, now we hear you.
Yes.
Hello.
Thank you so much, and I wish to add my voice to that of Honorable Robert Chagrani to thank you for the interest you're showing in the plight of Ugandans under a context of declining democracy. I want to start by re-echoing the values of the EU as enshrined under Article 2 of the European Union Treaty. And these are the values that we look up to: the values of human dignity, the values of freedom, democracy, equality, rule of law, and respect for human rights. The same values are enshrined in our constitution in Uganda, and they guide our work as a constitutional watchdog, the Center for Constitutional Governance, and the Human Rights Defender, and the work that I do as a chairperson of the Global Network for Domestic Election Observers. On 30th December, I was not feeling well. I was in bed sleeping. I was awakened by the children that police had sieged our home. About 30 police and military officers had surrounded our home. 15 of these officers entered into the compound and were captured by the CCTV camera at my home. 5 of these officers entered up to my bedroom where I was sleeping under medication with two guns. As I woke up to take a shower in my bathroom, 2 armed officers kept guard on my open bathroom, violating my right to privacy, violating my dignity. I was incarcerated for 3 days at Natete police station under difficult conditions of restricted access to family and lawyers. My child, I was allowed my son and my niece to bring me meals, but they would be held for more than 3 hours before serving me a simple meal, yet I was undergoing heavy medication in incarceration. I was denied legal representation. My lawyers only met me a few hours on 1st of January, a few hours to interrogation. During interrogation, I had 4 lawyers present at the police station. I was denied legal representation. I was alone. And one lawyer was told to sit outside and he will be invited by the police if needed. Yet Article 23 of the Constitution provides that any person suspected of having committed a crime is entitled to legal representation, access to family, lawyers, and doctors. I was denied. All my visitors were chased away. I was held 2 days without knowing the offense I had committed. And when it clocked 44 hours in detention, that's when an officer came to interrogate me. And I was asked questions regarding the president and his son and the media interviews I do as part of my work in advocacy. During arrest, all the phones that were in my home, including those of my children, were wrongly confiscated by the police in a scuffle that led to assault of my children, and the phones of my children were held for more than 1 month, and they were left at home with no means of communication. My phone is still in police custody, and I have started experiencing digital impersonation. My handle on TikTok, my personal handle, has been brought down by hackers, yet it's registered in the phone that is with police. 3 different accounts have been opened in my names using my biodata and my place of work, and they post offensive communication using deep fakes. The communication is related to what I was interrogated about. 2 of these accounts were opened when I was in detention in prison. And with my phone in the hands of police and with the digital impersonation, I don't know what else they are doing regarding my personal data and communication. Towards elections, I was profiled as a highly dangerous person because of the work that I do as a chairperson of the GENDEM, chairperson of the Eastern Horn of Africa Election Observers Network, vice chairperson of the Africa Elections Observer Network, and president of the East Africa Civil Society Forum. The security thinks that this work that I do in the region, on the continent, and at the global level is dangerous, and it warrants me being treated as a terrorist because of promoting democracy and human rights. This profiling is what led to my detention and the charges that are related to a voter register, which I have never seen, that are related to sharing of data on a voter register, which is a public document, and these are the charges that I am battling in court. When you look at the work, the characterization of my work, during travels at the airport, some random security officers would ask me what I do and why I travel so much. And the work was characterized as recruiting for opposition, as fundraising for opposition in security files. This is how I became a target of regime harassment. The unwritten offenses by the by the military and the security agencies in Uganda is that if you are a promoter of democracy and human rights, then you are a dangerous person to the government of Uganda. Our constitutional watchdog, the organization that I head locally, capitalizes on demanding for accountable leadership in line with the Constitution of Uganda. But calling out to the regime to account on human rights violations on several media platforms is what rendered me to be branded as a criminal in Uganda. The siege under my home, which lasted for more than 2 hours, surrounding the whole neighborhood, took away, violated our privacy, led to assault of my children, led to the detention of their phones, and depriving them of a right to communicate or study, including those that were engaged in online studies. I will now embark on the plight of civil society organizations in Uganda. The suspension of work permits for organizations that work on governance, human rights, and elections violates the NGO Act of Uganda, violates the NGO Amendment Act of 2024, because the definition of the NGO Bureau in Section 16 means the board members of the Bureau. These board members do not exist after rationalization. The secretary who signed forms purporting to be holding out as the Bureau is impersonating the Bureau and has no such mandate. And the suspended NGOs were not given a right to be heard, which is a right provided for in the NGO Act. And the indefinite suspension of permits is in effect closure of NGOs without due process. The NGOs have been intimidated into silence because of a mention of activities prejudicial to national security, and most of them are hopeless and they cannot fight back. My third issue is on general human rights violations in Uganda. The militarization of the accreditation process for voter education and election observation leading to elections, which we refused, saying that voter education cannot be the business of the military. And because we were pushing back, protecting the laws of Uganda, we were then marked as dangerous. In this election, there was no credible voter education, high militarization of elections, and disruption of opposition campaigns, especially those of the National Unity Platform, disrupted by the military and police, including roadblocks, the issues that we were talking about that led to the arrest.
Ms. Bire, I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Our chair, Hilde Woutmans, she had to leave, so I'm stepping in for her. My name is Ingeborg Telek, and I'm the vice chair of this committee. Can I ask you, please, to come to your conclusions, because I assume this was your third and last item you wanted to address, or not?
Yes, please. I will mention the state of judicial and rule of law as I go towards the conclusion.
Thank you.
We have the weak judiciary in place with questionable legitimacy because the Bar Association of Uganda has been locked out of the Judicial Service Commission, and the ongoing appointments, including that of the Chief Justice and Principal Judge, have questionable legitimacy because of lack of quorum at the Judicial Service Commission. There is also abuse of the presumption of innocence by the courts of Uganda, and anybody suspected of committing a crime is treated as if they have already been convicted, and this is a violation of Article 28 of the Constitution. As I conclude, I want to re-echo the diplomatic relations between the EU member states and citizens of Uganda. There is remarkable silence from your representatives in Uganda, and we understand the diplomatic relations to be relations between member states while promoting the pride and welfare of citizens. There is silence on violation of human rights in Uganda. There is silence on the re-echoing of EU values that are enshrined under Article 2 of the treaty. And through you, I want to request that the people of Uganda should not be pushed to lose confidence in your representatives in our capitals by neglecting the rule of law and rights of the people. I thank you so much.
Asante sana, Mrs. Bire, and your message is very well heard on this side. It's very well heard by the Parliament, and thank you so much for your intervention. And I think you really paved the way for our next speaker to also say something about the diplomatic relationships we hold as Europe with Uganda. So I want to give the floor to Mr. Jonas Jonasson, head of the unit for the Horn of Africa and East Africa in the European External Action Service. Mr. Johnson is the European Parliament resolution specifically called on the EU to engage with Ugandan authorities regarding violations, close monitoring relevant trails, and to review cooperation with the assistance for Uganda to ensure respect for EU principles, as Mrs. Bire was saying, implementing targeted sanctions and prioritize support for civil society, human rights, and LGBTIQ+ defenders and journalists. Can you please inform us about what the EEAS has been doing so far, both in Brussels and in Kampala, and how do you see the way forward? Mrs. Jonasson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, honourable members of this Parliament and distinguished colleagues also in this discussion, like the previous speakers. It's a very important opportunity indeed to discuss the situation in Uganda and EU-Uganda relations. Indeed, I would like to say a few words about that on our assessment of the elections and indeed, Chair, as you said, on the way ahead. Mm-hmm. First of all, I just wanted to refer to our statement of the 23rd of January, where we commented and acknowledged the results of the elections, but also expressed our regrets, especially with regard to post-election violence and threats against the opposition. The Chair already referred to the context of, indeed, EU-Uganda relations, where obviously there are many shared areas of common interest for cooperation with Uganda and with Ugandan people, which ranges from trade and investments, green transition, connectivity, climate resilience, sustainable forestry, etc. And in all of this, as you know, one of our flagship initiatives, the Global Gateway Strategy, is very prominent here. I will refrain from going into details, but also to say, as the Chair already mentioned, that Uganda's role in the region for peace and security is very important. Somalia was mentioned. Uganda's role as a major refugee hosting nation is very important and contributing to regional stabilization. And of course, Uganda has a global voice, for example, chairing the non-aligned movement. And in all of this, we stress that Uganda, through our governance programs, also strengthens democratic process and civil society. And we believe that our economic cooperation and in all these areas that I mentioned will also promote the interest of youth, notably. Having said that, the EU continues to support governance reforms, civil society and human rights initiatives, because sustainable development depends on accountable institutions, the rule of law and inclusive participation. And over many years, we have worked with Ugandan institutions and stakeholders to support democratic processes through election observation, governance programs, civic participation initiatives, and sustained political dialogue to contribute to an environment where political competition remains peaceful, inclusive, and trusted by citizens, as we have heard, is a very major issue. On the recent elections, actually our observations, and I knew that there would have been a representative also of the AU-IGAD-COMESA findings of the elections. They largely coincide and align, which acknowledge the largely peaceful conduct of voting while highlighting concerns related to the political playing field, arrests of opposition actors, and restrictions affecting access to information. And such observations underline the importance of continuous dialogue aimed at strengthening electoral credibility over time. And as I already said, we said publicly we regretted the post-electoral violence and threats, particularly against opposition leader Robert Kyagulanyi, Bobi Wine, and we called on all parties to exercise restraint on the authorities to ensure the safety of all political actors. Looking ahead, electoral reforms remains an important area of engagement, and we continue to encourage progress on issues such as the independence of the Electoral Commission, transparency in results management, campaign finance, oversight, equitable media access, and effective dispute resolution mechanism, and anchoring all these reforms in Uganda's own constitutional jurisprudence. Through initiatives such as governance programs, the EU has supported civic education, dialogue platforms, rule of law initiatives, and capacity building efforts designed to strengthen institutions and encourage peaceful political participation as a long-term strategy to promote democracy and the rule of law. And for this reason, we remain our engagement with all actors, government institutions, opposition representatives, but also civil society, religious leaders, and security actors, because we want to support this inclusive dialogue. We will therefore also continue to engage as a predictable, principled, and long-term partner supporting Uganda's democratic journey through dialogue, cooperation, and shared commitment to stability and inclusive government. That is particularly important as we actually celebrate this year the 50th anniversary of our relationship. And in that spirit, we would like to continue the support to the issues we have discussed today. But I want to stress that we are closely and we continue to closely monitoring the situation, as we've heard about today, the political and civic space, as well as the human rights situation in the country. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to colleagues, to members. Would you please, do you have questions? Would you like to speak out or to intervene? Yes, please. Yes, please, Mr. Ujian.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thanks for organizing this today's hearing. And I would like first to say on a personal note to Robert, all the best for you and for your family as well. We had the opportunity to discuss with David Lewis a couple of days ago about the situation during the election. And indeed, this looks more like a military operation, as you say, than to a real election. And for me, it's quite obvious that Uganda is can be at the same time this country that is brings stability to the region by engaging with neighbors and by hosting refugees from neighbors. And at the same time being horrible to its own opposition to people that engage in civil society. In a way, this country has kind of a split personality, being good at this on the one hand and mean to the inside, and that this state is a state as a booty for the Museveni family, and the regime can be seen today. Today there was planned to be held a Catholic Mass in the Lubaga Cathedral for political prisoner, Dr. Kizza Besigye, and other political prisoners that has been cancelled on the last minute by the Archbishop, probably because he got a call that it would be wise not to do this. For me, this shows that this is not a free country. I can only say that for me, there's no transparency in those elections, and already acknowledging the results of such a fraudulent election is taking part in supporting a regime that is, from my point of view, not duly elected. So I think that we are already too positive on that note as a European Union. So it's said several times that the Ugandan constitution is very clear on the provisions, but apparently nobody cares, at least from those who are in the regime. So my question to our friends in Uganda is, what can we do further to support democracy and rule of law and human rights in Uganda, a part of doing what we do today, which is putting light to this situation. You request for targeted sanctions. My question to BAS is, what is hindering us if we know clearly that there are some people personally involved in abducting people, killing people, to put in place targeted sanction? These are my two questions to our esteemed guests. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other colleagues who want to take the floor? Not otherwise, Bobi wine. Sorry for your family name is a little bit difficult for me to pronounce.
Yeah.
If you can give the floor first to you and then to Mrs. Bire. Yes.
Sure. May I request that you repeat the question again, please?
So, Robert, first I said all the best for you personally and for your family, but I wanted to know a part of putting light on the situation and organizing meetings like this and calling for targeted sanctions. What else can we do in order to support you on the ground that are working for democracy in your country?
Thank you very much. I'll talk about what you can do from your end and what you can do from our end here in Uganda. From your end, of course, you can apply targeted sanctions. And I hear very many times regime apologists claiming that when you put targeted sanctions on individuals, it affects the nation. No, it does not. It saves the nation. You can slap targeted sanctions, travel sanctions, economic and legal, to the individuals, which individuals we have presented internationally, and others have actually come out themselves, like General Muhoozi, Museveni's son. You have laws like the Global Magnitsky, which has been applied to many human rights violators. We request that the same be applied to the regime back in Uganda. But also association. I mean, it slaps those who believes in democracy and human rights in the face when they see ambassadors or diplomats from the world-known democracies standing shoulder to shoulder with gross human rights violations. For example, imagine just a day or hours after General Muhoozi tweets taking pride in murdering people, in attacking people's families and undressing people and tweeting it, taking pride in killing. And then the next minute, you're going to see an official picture of an ambassador from a renowned democracy standing shoulder to shoulder. That is embracing, that is legitimizing impunity. And we call for distancing on that. I mean, I've not seen an ambassador or an government official from a democracy standing shoulder to shoulder with Lukashenko or these other, renowned dictators. Also, we have requested that for all the aid that is extended to Uganda, let it be conditional. Let it be conditioned to respect to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. That would be very helpful. If it is not possible to cut out any cooperation, of course, the best thing would be for a democracy to disassociate from anything that contradicts the same. However, if it is not achievable to completely disassociate, then at least let there be a minimum of demanded, reforms that can lead Uganda to a line of democracy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bobi Wine. And now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Sarah Biriti. I don't see her. Are you still there? Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Sarah, can you say something?
Thank you so much.
About what we can do from our side more?
Yes, I associate myself with the submissions of Honorable Kyagulanyi on what you can do. I just want to re-emphasize 3 issues. One is that you should use more of the Global Magnitsky Act on individuals that are engaged in gross violations of human rights in Uganda. 2 is that you should put stringent measures to your funding agreements regarding the protection of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law in Uganda that are at their lowest at this time, and we are worried about the next 5 years as citizens. 3 is that you should support more people as compared to government. Empower the people to fight for and protect their democracy. This is what you can do.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Biriti. And now, last, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Johnson. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about the sanctions, but also the conditions for aid.
Thank you very much. Well, it has been many references to the treaties of the European Union, and of course that is what's steering our engagement with all our partners globally. So it also in this case, of course, our development cooperation and our cooperation in general is not unconditional. It is based on our very clear values and expectations. In the case of Uganda, I've already outlined how we, at this stage, we monitor the situation very, very closely. We are engaging in a dialogue with both government, indeed, but also opposition and civil society. All of this, of course, is not happening in the public eye, but there is clearly a very proactive approach that we have, and also, of course, frank discussions. And it's through our development cooperation and the cooperation that we have, of course, we target that very much to governance and support to civil society, as I've outlined. And we have the possibility of focusing additionally on that as we deem necessary, and to accompany a reform process. So the way we today, the approach that we have today is one of engagement, and the proposals of restrictive measures have not been on the table in these discussions and in our and also in our discussions with our member states.
Thank you, and I would like to thank all our speakers or all our guests for today for their interventions, and also would like to emphasize and to stress that we as European Parliament are committed to support a peaceful and prosperous society in Uganda, and to do the work with all the relevant stakeholders to achieve this. So we will continue closely monitoring the situation in Uganda, and we do call on the Ugandan authorities to guarantee the possibility of a safe return, physical integrity and freedom of movement for Mr. Robert Kyagulanyi, Bobi Wine, as well as to ensure due process and an independent investigation into the arbitrary arrest and detention of Dr. Sarah Biriti. With this, dear colleagues, this brings us almost to the end of this meeting. if there are no more questions for the members, then I would like to close today's meeting. The next date of the next delegation meeting will be communicated in time. So hereby I close the meeting. So I'm very sorry. Good to see you. I'm sorry. So yeah, next time. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Mukulikeyo nate. Parliament eyolwayo bwetyo bwebadde. Parliament y'abazungu tebeeranga ey'abali. Parliament bwetyo bwebadde ey'olunaku olwaleero. President Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu alabikiddeko mu Parliament eno ng'ayita ku lukomo oba ayise ku Skype, then ne Sara Bire naye ayitiddeko ku lukomo wano. Babuuzizza President biki ky'oyagala tukuyambe fenga eno. President azzeemu n'abategeeza n'abagamba abantu bano muboole gavumenti ya Museveni ne mutabani we Muhoozi n'abantu abakola ebikolobero ku by'abantu. N'agamba n'asaba muteekewo sanctions, abantu bano mubateekeko sanctions, mubateekeko bibakuntumye, mubateekeko envumbo. Omwami oli gwe segedde linnya azzeemu n'agamba alina kyannyonnyodde awo, nja kukibaddamu nkibannyonnyola awo. Naye ategeezezza nti waliwo ebimu bye balina okukolako nga bo bokka si be beetongodde, naye nga bagenda kubitunulako balabe enkola gye bagenda okubikolako. Kubanga ebimu bagamba bwe bakola sanctions ku bantu ba Ssekinnoomu ate bikosa bannayuganda. President kyagambye nti nedda, bwe bateeka sanctions ku muntu ne basiba envumbo ku byobugagga bye bikosa ye ng'omuntu. So abantu bano mubamanye, abantu bano mbanye nti byo be bakola be baki baba bayina ebintu bo enkwata gye bakwatamu ebintu byabwe. Parliament ye Uganda tebanga parliament y'abali. Kiki ky'ogamba gwali ku mukutu wano nga nsobola okukisoma wano live eno eri sponsored by Rebecca Agaba. Yatutaddemu akasente okulaba nti tubatuusaako live eno, kulaba nti president ayogerako eri mmwe nga mumulaba. Mpuulira singa gwe babuuziza ekibuuzo ekyo kiki wali agadde okukola, kiki wali agadde gundi abazungu bano bakuyambeko, oba Parliament ya EU kiki wali agadde ekuyambeko, kiki wali agadde ekuyambeko Parliament eno kiki wali agadde ekuyambeko. Kyegedde. So ngenda kusooka eryo eddoboozi ngenda dijjakokko nsobole okusomako ku komenti zammwe entonotono. Parliament eggaddewo n'eki kye wali agadde. Maapu mbadde egenze sigirabye eraze luddawa. Museveni and his brother Salim Saleh must be arrested by immediately. Nga Victoria yaffe president tajogeddeeko. Maapu webale kutubeezaawo, thank you. Oyo ye Muwonge. Bakwate Museveni ne mutabani we period, oyo Judith Merasi. Thanks Maapu Media and Mami Rebecca Agaba. Okay, the vibes Uganda yagambye. Let them come and take those 3 people. Bani those people oyo Nasimu wagala agambye leka bajje batwala abantu abo basatu nani. They have to stop funding Museveni regime. Ono Junju Emmanuel Junju agambye atya wano sigirabe. big up all comrades ya Kiwanuka bwagambye era pogoba bwamuse sikitegedde bano wandika mu Luzungu njabbiza mu Luganda bwe bali kutawanya nze siva ku kya president babakube sanction oba zitunyize tuddemu amagezi nze njagala basazeemu ebyava mu kulonda akalulu tukaddemu nga ne internet kweri. Ibrahim Makumbi bwagambye Emmanuel Sentino agambye boogere ne Trump ajjano ne Museveni nga bwe yakola ku Maduro oyo Emmanuel Santio. Nicholas Tuliahebwa, in short, the next 5 years should just be aimed at good governance. Etambudde nga sinnagimalayo. We need action as they make Robert Kyagulanyi to become the president as we elect him. Thanks so much, Mami Dr. Sarah Berete and our beloved president. Map, thanks so much for the good work. I think Mr. President Kyagulanyi Robert Sentamo abadde mutuufu nnyo because even Madam Sarah akoze kyekimu bwekiri bagenda okujja komenti zammwe ziraziibwa ez'Oluzungu nga ziddukawo mangu ez'Oluganda ziberwawo. Proud of our sister Gaba for sponsoring this Clear TV just to remove Museveni oyo Kato Edrin hak manna bakino kigamu bakube kitegedde teka awe Museveni oyo yagambye Nantale Catherine babagambe ko balekeraawo okusibira abantu obwerere Hassan Suna. We are requesting European Parliament to arrest all those violating human rights in Uganda. Eyo Kiza agambye nti abadde asaba abantu abo basibwe abatyobola eddembe ly'obuntu mu ggwanga Uganda bamukwate kamukama nga egenze. At least akalulu bakaddemu oyo lukyamuziki konyogo batukebe sikitegedde wandika ekinwa naawe okitegedde nti nange agenda okukisoma nange nabonaabona ate nasomera ku mulembe gwa UPE. What I need is our victory and Museveni must be arrested for the people he killed. Najjoma agambye nti ye kyeyeetaaga buwanguzi bwaffe Museveni asaana kusibwa ku lw'abantu abasse. Ono n'agamba Jodo Jasmine Janet Museveni free Uganda now, it's not your property, enough is enough. Eyo bwagambye basazeemu ebyava mu kulonda tuddemu tulondenga internet kweri oyo Jackie Mayanja. We appreciate our president Kyagulanyi to stand on his words. Twebaza oyo Jonjo Emma agambye twebaza president okusigala nga ayimiridde ku bigere bye n'amazima n'obwenkanya. They may stop supporting the dictator. Oyo Sabex agambye nti balekerawo naawe supporting a dictator. I thought our need to overthrow dictator nothing much. Fekye twetaaga na kintu agambye kintu kimu kyokka kukasuka nakyemalira. Tewali kirala. Museveni free or political prisoners. Map, let them come and take those people. Museveni, his son, ne Kigadi Chi Hosi. Bino byensoma bannange si bya Map Media n'abagidduka by'abantu ba commenta nawe osobola obisomako. 70 must go with all his regime. Enough is enough. Sikitegedde 70 nsanvu balina ogenda ku. We must all stand for our nations. Frobisha Saka. Kolezese ku mannya gammwe mannya nga zisigategeera. Maapu bakwate Museveni ngeganya okutambula unyeerwa egenze. We need justice. We need justice and announce Kyagulanyi as the president of the Republic of Uganda. Oyo aine edi agambye twetaaga bwenkanya twagala Kyagulanyi alangirirwe kuba president. Let them come for Museveni, leka bajje ku Museveni. Museveni must what? Wogambe Shakina Glory must do what? Museveni must be taken by ACC and his son. Museveni ate aliwe mukoti yensi yonna ne mutabani we. Let them come from Museveni. Munanga mugamba bamunoni. Bamunoni munamuwerekerako. Museveni did not win election. Museveni teyawangulo yeridia. Teyawangulo kalulu. Let them mapunze Kyagulanyi wenge simulaba mukamwa kyagambye kyempitofu. Jackson. No Uganda duliao. Enough is enough to kukoye Museveni. By election wenedi singa bakwata nsagala kuvumira wano muntu ositiyo bwovuma sigisoma gendo biwandike uwo muganda wa baba nabyesomera Bosi yange inzo kuita mwanze mbanga avuma nedda. Let them come from Museveni kyontisoma bamunone. We need the president Kyagulanyi Sentamu Robert announced as the president because no one voted for Museveni. Agambye twetaga Kyagulanyi Robert Sentamu alangirirwe kubanga tewali n'omu yalonda Museveni oyo yani. Shakina Glory yagambye Museveni must go ongoye Dishoni. Jackie Mayanja Gambie and another thing, let EU arrest Museveni and his son Muhoozi. Yasabye bamutisibe ne mutabani we. Map let them come from Museveni or your Kaiden Haka. So you want to kill so you want to them kill him. Wandika mu Luganda va ku Luzungu nakugambye bo wandika mu Luganda ambisoma ne Oluzungu oluterevu ndusoma. Immediately Museveni must be arrested and Muhoozi. Yamangu ddala Museveni alina okusibwa ne mutabani we Muhoozi. We need change walayi. Enough is enough. Museveni must go. We want actions. Please take Museveni away from our nation. Ndowooza bwe bitubimbadde. Bingi comment zikyali nyingi ate ng'essaawa za mawulire. Bannaye mudduke mu mawulire nze nange mbaweerezza akaalo. Mwebale nnyo mwebalire ddala Omukama abanjagalire. Musule bulungi mweraba.